Welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me, as always, is Mike. How are you today? Are you ready to do some anthropological studies?
Never been more ready, ever.
All right. And also with us is Justin. Are you ready to steal Mike's thesis, Justin?
Yes, I am, but
Typical.
not really after watching certain movies we'll be talking about later.
Okay.
I've learned my lesson without actually having to learn my lesson, if you know what I mean.
That's what movies are for.
Yep. We've all learned something today. Or whenever we watch the movie. All right. So, before we get started, guys, in honor of Midsommar, I wanted to ask you guys, what is your favorite movie bear?
Who wants to go first?
I'll kick it off.
Okay.
Since I asked the question, I say my favorite bear in all of movies and TV is Little Bart that appears in episode 7, season 3 of Game of Thrones.
That's a good one.
Titled The Bear and the Maiden Fair.
I'm so glad, because I had no idea what you were talking about. You said Little Bart, and I was like, I have never heard of Little Bart. This must be some bear that I don't...
According to Google, that's his name. Little Bart.
Well, that's pleasant, I hope. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
It's a cute name for a bear. Because he's not little, you see.
It's ironic.
Like Tiny Tim being a 8-foot giant.
Exactly. What about you, Justin? What's your favorite movie bear?
Well, I had to think about this one for about a quarter of a second because I absolutely love Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, bother.
Yeah. He so encompasses everything that I want to be. I even read the book. Are you guys familiar with The Tao of Pooh?
No.
I've heard of it, yes.
And it's essentially a book that compares Pooh's way of life and general demeanor to Taoism and how he like perfectly embodies like the Taoist spirit and like things you want to be, I guess. And then it also compares like the other characters in the 100 Acre Woods and how they don't embody the Taoist beliefs and stuff.
You know, I don't know much about Taoism, but I can't imagine wanting to be like Pooh. He's fat, he's greedy, he's not very bright, and he gets stuck in things. But he's lovable.
Well, I don't know that he's greedy.
He's greedy for that
I
honey.
think it's more of like he craves the simple things and he doesn't worry about the future and he doesn't fret over all the things that aren't important. So what you call greed for honey is like him understanding what's valuable in life and happiness and stuff like that.
I get it. He's still a little slothish, though, no?
Well, I mean, you're talking more the Christian religion sins and stuff. Taoism,
I just think it's a generally undesirable characteristic. But we're getting way too caught up in that.
yeah,
I'm so sorry.
I don't want to get too much into religion and philosophy right now, so we should probably ask Chris what his favorite bear is.
What's your favorite bear, Chris?
My favorite bear is not unlike Justin's. It is Baloo from The Jungle Book. You know, he just
yes.
he just wants the bare necessities too. You know,
Yeah.
to have a good time.
I get that one.
Yeah.
What is it about bears? Are they just kind of happy-go-lucky and easygoing?
Yeah, that's
Because they don't have
interesting.
any natural predators.
Yeah, they just sit back.
If you're on top of the food chain, you'd feel pretty happy-go-lucky too. I guess we are on top of the
Yeah.
food chain, sort of. But
Yeah.
We are.
but for an animal, you can't get much safer than a bear.
Nah. If I had to be an animal, it'd probably be a bear.
All right, well, I hope everyone enjoyed that and found that very fascinating.
Yeah. And if you didn't, then, my backup question was talking about our favorite full frontal male nude scene in films. So if you prefer that one, maybe we can do that next week. Let us know.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wait,
Let us know if you have any strong opinions on that.
That wasn't the question we just answered, because my favorite full frontal male nude scene is Baloo. He's not wearing any pants, so...
Yeah, changes nothing.
Yeah.
All right. Normally, we like to start off every episode in a section called News on the March, and then for our feature review, we will be reviewing Ari Aster's newest film, Midsommar.
And don't forget that each month we do a casualty criterion. So make sure you pay attention to your feeds. And last month we did one on Stalker. And look forward to our next episode on Jean-Luc Godard's Weekend. The cool thing about this is that we each get to pick a movie, and then you guys get to vote on them. So pay attention to our social medias so that you guys can vote for our next Criterion film that we review on Casualty Criterion.
Last time, I think Weekend narrowly won out over Alphaville and Pierre Lafoe. It was probably the closest poll yet.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh,
It was almost
definitely
a
the
tie.
closest one. I think it was like one vote, maybe two, making up the difference. It was really, really close.
Also, Justin's won like the last 4 months or so let's try to stop that record.
Yeah, we have to end this.
Yeah.
before it gets out of hand.
I guess. I don't know. I'm cool with it. I like winning.
Yeah.
But the episode should be coming out next week, right?
Yeah. We'll be able to talk about Spine number 1000 from the Casualty Criterion, or not the Casualty Criterion, but the Criterion Collection. They'll have announced it by then.
Hopefully it's something monumentally cool.
I'm sure it will be. And of course, next week we'll be putting out a new poll to choose our next Casualty Criterion film. And if you want to follow along and vote in that poll, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. You can also send us questions or comments on the films we're going to be reviewing to casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And of course, if you haven't yet and you enjoy the show, go on to iTunes, give us a 5-star review, help people find the show.
And thank you. All right, guys, with that, are we ready to move into news on the march?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
News on the march!
All right, so this week, a movie opened up called Crawl. Have you guys heard of this movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a movie that is about alligators, and that's all I really knew about it. I kind of thought it would be like a retro throwback to like a kind of movie they don't really make anymore. Or at least not that I've noticed in the past few years. Going into it, I was looking for like a Lake Placid or Deep Blue Sea kind of vibe, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I got based on the trailer.
Yeah, so I was hoping for that level of fun, or at the very least, just being entertaining. I wanted that from the Meg last year or the year before, but I was pretty bummed out when that turned out to be pretty bland.
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was kind of bloodless and like all the things you want out of a monster movie. It didn't really provide. And I think Crawl delivered on being more thrilling and gory than The Meg, and I liked it.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm enthusiastic about it, though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were some good thrills, nonetheless, but it's a pretty ridiculous movie, which, I mean, is what it needs to be fun, I think.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not-
what I would want.
Yeah, it's not Deep Blue Sea levels of ridiculous, though. It's just regular alligators, not genetically enhanced ones or anything.
Bummer.
Yeah, but I will say that they are very, very active alligators. They're the most active alligators I've ever seen. So I kept wondering, like, why are these alligators so agitated and so active? But they never really explain that, and who cares, really, I guess, by the end of
Isn't
it.
like the premise that during like flooding from like a hurricane or something like that, these alligators get into people's houses and neighborhoods and attack?
That's it.
Yeah, so maybe they're just upset because they've been displaced by a hurricane and they're just lashing out because they don't know who else to be mad at.
I think that's it. I think that's the end. But they don't ever really say that. They're just kind of like, there's a bunch of alligators here getting in through a storm drain.
You know, it's funny that you guys mention this. I think I have the real reason why these alligators are upset. And this is a real news article that I saw today. And it was a Houston news article warning people about flushing drugs down the toilet. And they are.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
They are afraid that we're going to create meth alligators. So maybe that's what's happened in this situation. Like they haven't gotten their fix, and so they're searching for their meth fix. And then that's a real news article that is pretty crazy, if you ask me.
This is more like a warning and a PSA.
I saw that on Not the Onion on Reddit.
Oh.
Yeah, so anyway, Crawl, Barry Pepper's in this. And that's always good because I don't really see that guy that often, and I think he's a good actor.
Yeah, he is. I like him a lot.
Yeah, the last thing I saw him in was one of the sequel films of the Maze Runner trilogy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice. I think the last new movie I saw him in was like True Grit, or that's not even new anymore. It's like almost 10 years old, but
Yeah, that's not new.
it feels new to me still because it's not the old True Grit.
Yeah, relatively speaking, in that sense, it's very new. Yeah, good call.
I will say that I had the worst audience ever in this movie. But, you know, I think I can't really fault them because, like, I'm going to, like, a movie that kind of, like, attracts the lowest common denominator.
Right.
So I can't really be super bummed when that's what turns up in the audience, you know?
Right. Wasn't the director of this film, is he the director that did Fallen Kingdom, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom?
No, I don't. No. That's J.A. Bayona. This is,
Oh, no, he did something.
I'm looking it up now. This director was Alexandre Aja?
Oh, he did the Hills Have Eyes remake, like the good one.
Oh, yeah,
From
yeah. He did
2006.
Hills Have Eyes and he did Piranha 3D.
And High Tension, which are...
Oh, and High Tension. It has a different cover on IMDb than the one I'm used to.
Yeah, I kind of like all of those movies. Piranha 3D the least, but I really like the Hills Have Eyes remake and High Tension. I thought they were both pretty
he kind of
rad.
has trashy horror, well-made trashy horror on lockdown, I guess.
Seems that way.
He gets it.
So is Crawl more horror or more like Jurassic Park suspense?
So that's what I was going to say, actually. This movie, to me, is more thrilling than the last 2 Jurassic Park movies.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And not
than
hard
The
to do.
Meg. Like, it's a better monster movie than Godzilla. The first, I haven't seen the new Godzilla that came out this year, but like the 2014 Godzilla, like these alligators are like better villains than like anything in those movies put together.
Nice.
That's not super high praise though. Like I said, I'm not enthusiastic about this movie, but I think if you're going for like a monster movie and you just want like fun thrills, this movie does deliver on that. I will say that this movie should not be called Crawl. It should definitely be called Swim if you're going to go with like
What people are
a
doing.
verb. Yeah. The gators rarely crawl in this movie. The people rarely crawl. The major plot points and character development is actually wrapped up in the idea of swimming. So much so that I was actually distracted by the title Crawl halfway through the movie.
Right.
But that's a nitpick. If you see the movie, I think you'll know what I mean. Ultimately, fun movie, but not really worth going to the theaters to see it because I feel like you might have to endure a terrible audience. So, watch it at home.
Will do.
Yeah. And that's all I really have about Crawl. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was I started season 2 of a show called American Gods.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Have either of you seen American Gods at all? Or have you seen season 2 or season 1 or any of it at all?
I got through about half of season 1 of American Gods. I was not a very big fan of it.
Yeah.
So
I haven't seen any personally.
Well, I agree with Chris about season 1. I watched the whole thing, and I will say that I left season 1 not really comprehending what the hell the show was going to be,
yeah.
which is weird because I had 8 hours to kind of get a handle on it. But at the end of it, it's so incomprehensible at times and so kind of up its own ass. And I blame that kind of on the showrunner because there was some drama behind the scenes, I guess, between seasons 1 and season 2, where Brian Fuller, the showrunner who did like Hannibal, I guess he's most famous for Hannibal, like the
Pushing Daisies.
The TV show Hannibal, not the movie that Ridley Scott did.
Right.
But anyway, he's very much about like visuals and like really beautiful imagery. But man, his storytelling capabilities, I question tremendously based on season 1. So anyway, he got fired. And season 2, I've watched 2 episodes so far. And let me tell you, they are infinitely better than anything in season 1. I wasn't even sure that I wanted to start season 2 based on my overall impressions of season 1.
Right.
But it was already all out. I didn't even know it had come out. And it's all said and done. So my girlfriend and I decided to watch it. And right away at the beginning of season 2, you still have beautiful imagery. Like they're still trying to keep the same aesthetic of the show. But the tone and the pacing and the conversations are so much easier to digest. And right off the bat, season 2, episode 1, you have a big speech from Ian McShane telling you exactly what the hell's going on, who everyone is, what their plan is, what's happening. And you have very little questions from there on out. Whereas like season 1, I kept being like, all right, any minute now, they're going to explain to me who they are, what exactly they want, and they never do. Or they kind of do, but like in an unsatisfying type way.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you were on the fence of American Gods season 1, I recommend trying American Gods season 2, at least based on the first 2 episodes. It seems like it picks up the pace and doesn't seem to be quite as taxing to watch. But I don't know if it'll end well. I think they're going to do 3 seasons total. I don't know if Starz even canceled it after season 2 or not, because I literally heard nothing about it, and then I just discovered it was out like not too long ago.
Would you say I could go straight to season 2 and not bother with 1, or do I kind of need to watch 1?
I mean, you could probably watch, like, you probably need to see some like highlights from season 1, but they do a pretty good job of explaining everything, like in season 2. But I would get on YouTube and just like watch like a season 1 30-minute recap video or something like that if you can find one.
Gotcha.
Give it a shot. It's interesting. I think, Chris, if you ever feel like finishing season 1, I think it's worth it because there is some good stuff, especially in the latter half of season 1. Once you get introduced to all the characters and everyone's kind of like doing their thing, Yeah, I would be interested to see what you think about like the stark difference in tone between the two seasons.
Yeah, I might just skip to season 2. I've read the book, so that might be a thing I can do is just skip on into season 2. Yeah. One of my favorite anecdotes from season 1 is Neil Gaiman was upset with something Brian Fuller was doing to his main character, Shadow. And Neil Gaiman's like, I swear to God, I will go downstairs and step in front of a bus if you guys do that to Shadow. So like very dramatic things happening behind the scenes there.
Goodness, that sounds dramatic. I wonder what that thing was.
Well, it's spoilery, but they actually like talk about what exactly it was that they changed and they had to change. So
interesting. I want to hear that when we're not recording.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, that's all I've got about American Gods. There's not much more I can say since you guys aren't caught up. So
sorry.
Who else has something?
I have something. A milestone for me in TV watching, or I consider it a milestone every time I finish like watching a full series of something. You know?
For sure. Makes sense.
And this past week, I finished off along with my fiance. We've been watching it together. The entire series of Boy Meets World, which we've been watching for about a month or so.
I feel like there's a lot of episodes in that show.
There are. It's 7 seasons, and every season has between, I think, 20 and 24 episodes.
Good Lord.
Quick math in my head tells me that's about 140 episodes, which sounds like a lot. That sounds like too many, really, but that's probably
it seemed like
right.
a lot more when I was growing up alongside it.
Yeah, but I think it's because you don't really realize how like TV seasons work when you're young, and it's playing every week no matter what.
7 years is a long time when you've only lived like 12 years.
Yeah, it feels like it just goes on forever. But what I will say is we watched this faster than any other series we've watched, even like shorter series. Like, it took us probably almost twice as long to get through BoJack Horseman than it did Boy Meets World. Because I think this show is just so easy to watch, and I really enjoyed it more than I thought it would. You know, I have that thing of revisiting shows and movies that I loved when I was a kid where I worry that it's going to not be as good or seem super lame. And I really didn't have that as much as I did. Like, there are moments because the 90s was kind of a weird time.
Yeah.
Where people in general were just lame. But I think it's actually a really fantastic show. I think for me, it's kind of like I would compare it to Boyhood, you know, where you just watch this kid grow up and deal with stuff, but obviously much more extended over time than Boyhood, which was like edited down to like a 2.5 hour movie. And this is 7 seasons of TV. And I just, in that sense, it's really fascinating to watch these kids grow up and stay good actors. And
let me ask you this.
Be entertaining.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So when I was growing up, I watched Boy Meets World a lot, but I kind of ducked out of the series once they went to college. Mm-hmm. And whenever I watched those, like on like Friday nights or Saturday nights, whatever the hell that Nickelodeon, what is it called? Whenever like Saturday nights,
they had Snick.
Snick, that's what it was.
But Boy Meets World was, I think, on ABC and Disney. So it might have been a TGIF ABC.
Maybe. It was one of those things where it's like the new episodes came on like on a weekend night or something like that.
Yeah.
Or whatever channel. So let me ask you, I seem to remember as soon as they went to college, the show kind of became more about his brother and it got less good. Did you see a dramatic drop in quality throughout the series, or does it pretty much stay consistent the whole time?
I think it stays consistent. I think you lose the attention to detail with the growth of each character because they bring in more characters.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they have his brother end up with a roommate, and they bring in a girl roommate, the tall redhead girl, Rachel. And Sean's girlfriend, Angela, is a major part of the cast at that point. And when they start trying to balance all of those people, you lose some. Like, the older brother, Eric, is pretty well developed and has a lot of episodes where he goes through stuff on his own. So you are kind of watching both of them, even though, you know, Corey is the main boy, the boy of Boy Meets World.
Yeah.
You get a lot with him early on, but once they try to
meeting the world.
Exactly. And once you try to like balance too many characters other than Corey and like Topanga and Sean, like all of those other characters get kind of muddled. And I think that's kind of the problem with it, even though it's not much of a problem. Like, I still liked it from start to finish.
Right.
It's certainly weaker, though. You're right. Like, and I had never finished I'd never finished the series before, and I had barely watched any of the college episodes. Just like you, like I kind of checked out at that point. I'm wondering if it's because like the show was going on up until 2000. So like for you and me, who we graduated in 04 and 05, like when they were in college, we were about to
middle
go to
school?
high school.
Yeah.
So like college didn't really connect with it as much as we did when they were in like grade school.
Well, that, and also I think I primarily saw the show in rerun format, like after school. And so by the time I caught up with the series, the new episodes weren't in that rerun format yet, right? Like the new episodes were coming on Fridays and Saturday nights. So once I ran out of like whatever was on whatever channel I was watching it on, I kind of just didn't seek it out to keep up with the series, you know?
Yeah. I would say it definitely peaks in season 5 and then kind of goes a bit downhill. But I think that the last thing I'll say about it is that it did surprise me because I remember the show being funny as a kid, and it still is. It definitely has some funny things that happen in it, but there's actually a lot of really moving stuff that is slightly a little over melodramatic, but like it still works, I think, and it's still connected with me. Like I was surprised at the amount of times that I was like genuinely moved. Like I cried at a couple of different points. Which I didn't expect going into a rewatch of Boy Meets World, the show I liked when I was a kid, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it did kind of surprise me in a few places where it got genuinely, truly good.
You know, sometimes when I think back at like some of the plots in Boy Meets World and I try to remember what happens, I often get it confused with the Wonder Years and plots from that show.
Yeah. I started
Like-
rewatching The Wonder Years recently too.
Yeah, how's that hold up?
It's way more serious than I thought I remember it being.
Yeah, that's whenever like sometimes when I look back, that's exactly what made me think of it. Like sometimes when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, didn't Eric like meet a kid with like PTSD or something? Oh no, that was the brother from Wonder Years or something.
Yeah.
And so like I get like because there's like a little kid with brown hair, his girlfriend, and an older brother. It's like the same kind of like dynamics, you
And
know?
they're
I think they're
brothers.
related.
Yeah, they're brothers.
The two main
Fred
actors.
Savage and what is it?
Ben Savage is
What the
Corey
hell? Oh
from
my
Boy
god,
Meets
no
World.
wonder.
Yeah.
No wonder. It all
They
makes sense
They
now.
look kind of the same.
No wonder I get them so mixed up. Oh my god, my mind is blown right now.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay, well,
My problem is separating the dad from American History X, the Boy Meets World dad from American History X. Like in both of them, he plays the dad. Just one, he's really racist. So
Yeah, there's another movie I've seen him in where he's a super creepy dude, and
he was in.
that's hard. It's hard to. I saw him as Boy Meets World dad first, so I'm like, no,
Okay.
don't do that, guy. You're such a good dad.
yeah. He was in Deadwood too recently, and he played a dad.
indeed.
He's got that
Small
role
world.
Yeah.
He's
locked down.
typecast.
All right, but
Okay,
that's
I
it
think we should
for
move
Boy
on.
Meets World. Yeah. So who's next?
Yeah. So this weekend, you guys may not know, but it was Ingmar Bergman's birthday. So at the local Alamo Draft House in Houston, we got they were playing The Seventh Seal, and it just happened that my mother was also in town, so I dragged her to The Seventh Seal, and we watched The Seventh Seal, and it was great. You guys did an episode on it. I was absent for that episode, so I hadn't seen it in a while. In fact, I think the last time I'd seen it was like I'd rented it from the library, and it was on a VHS, a really, really crummy VHS copy.
Nice.
Wow.
And seeing it in the theater again, it was what was the Peter Jackson film that we watched? They Shall Not Grow Old?
They shall
old.
not grow old.
Yeah, it was almost that level of difference between that VHS. It was almost really hard to watch it on VHS, and then this one was just pristine and beautiful, and it was just night and day difference. But the movie's great. My mom, who doesn't watch these things, also enjoyed it. Some of that may be because she just wanted to appease me as well. But
She's like, it's wonderful, Chris. It's really good.
Yeah, she's like, it took me a little while to get into
cinematography
it.
was great.
Yeah, she probably didn't mention the cinematography, but she was like, it took me a little while to get into it, but then once you get used to it, you start to like it more. And so yeah, she
You should be
really
like,
liked it.
Mom, it's got the guy from Bill and Ted in it. Death.
Yeah. I mean, she knows Max von Sydow for sure. Who that guy? I don't think he ever aged. He was 26 when they filmed this in 1957, and
Oh my gosh.
he never. He looks 50 in this.
He looks the same in Game of Thrones. Even.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, it's
Never
a great,
aged. Not a day.
It's a great film. I loved it a lot. Yeah, and that's basically all I have. There's a whole episode if you guys want to go listen to Mike and Justin talk about it.
Yeah, go look up our Casualty Criterion on The Seventh Seal. That's one of our first Casualty Criterions that I was on board for.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was.
So if it sucks, I'm sorry.
I actually listened to it on the way home.
Did
you
you
listen
to
to it on the way home?
Yeah, my mom and I listened to it on the way home. I was like,
I hope I didn't say anything embarrassing or swear too much.
yeah, well, my mom has disowned you, Mike. So
Oh no. I must have then.
Cool. And if you haven't seen The Seventh Seal, also look that up and go see it. Cause
Oh, yeah, for
real.
sure.
I think we all like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll understand Bill and Ted more.
Yeah, and it's one of those staples too. I mean, I think it's there's several movies that are like kind of the bedrock of film, and Seven Seals one of them. You know, like Rashomon or Seven Samurai. Though, you know, you really got to tick those off. I think on your to watch list.
Yeah, anybody who claims to be in film should see Seventh Seal at some point, I think.
Yeah, any self-proclaimed cinephile, it's almost required.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Well, that's The Seventh Seal. Check that out in theaters in certain places and Criterion everywhere.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. So, Chris, I think we have one more thing on our minds this week, and that is Stranger Things 3. Not season 3. It's called Stranger Things 3.
It's a sequel.
They should have called it Stranger Things.
Missed opportunity.
Yep.
That way they would have a whole new section on Netflix for the season 3 alone. Season 1 and 2 would have been under one name. Anyways, so Chris, what did you think about Stranger Things season 3, and what's your relationship with Stranger Things, the series as a whole?
I think I'll start off with my relationship, and I think everybody...
that makes more sense.
Yeah.
I didn't ask it in the right order, but that makes more sense.
Yeah. I think everybody kind of has the same experience with at least the first Stranger Things that watched it when it first came out, and I think it was a surprise to everybody about how good it was, and it was on Netflix. It's the first really good Netflix produced show that I remember seeing, that I can remember right off the top of my head right now. So I really liked Stranger Things the first season, and actually with my mom being in town, I actually rewatched season 1, and it's still really good. I still like it a lot. So yeah, I like Stranger Things. Season 2 wasn't as good as season 1, of course, and then Stranger Things 3. I really like these characters. I like hanging out with them. I think all of the characters are a lot of fun, and it's good to just get to hang out with him. My problem with the show is I don't think there's two problems I have. One is there's not emotional consistency. You know, like everybody's going through these really traumatic events, and when the next season comes up, it's a lot like an 80s sequel anyways, but when the next sequel comes up, nobody is dealing with these emotional consequences of what happened in the previous season.
I think one character is.
Yeah, okay.
One character named Will Byers is.
Yeah, that's probably true, and I'll grant you that. And then the other thing is, I feel like it's the same format each season. Like, so if you've seen season 1, you kind of know how season 2 and season 3 are going to work, like as far as the structure of the show goes, like kind of the Scooby-Doo solving the mystery thing. And I would like to see season 4, which I'm sure there's going to be another one. I'd like to see season 4 do something new. But like I said, I enjoyed my time with them, and I know everybody's raving about season 3, and I feel like I'm in the minority because I liked it. I just don't love it, like everybody else seems to right now. What did you think, Mike?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I liked season 3 about as much as I liked the first season, I think, which is to say it's pretty good, but, you know, I probably won't think about it again until season 4 comes out, because I don't really know that there's a lot there to think about, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. It's an improvement on season 2. For sure, at least in my eyes. I think it deals with the kids getting older and becoming teenagers, and some of them grow up faster than others, and when the show is about that, I found it to be really interesting.
Agreed, yeah.
I think maybe David Harbour's character goes a little bit off the rails this season and kind of becomes a little too silly for a good portion of it, maybe too goofy. Mm-hmm. But I think all the emotional things land with me still. I think, I don't, he's not a clown or anything, it's just a little less comedic relief from him, I think, would be better. A little bit more serious like he was in the first 2 seasons. This seems like a good action sci-fi show that you can pretty much watch with anybody, like parents or kids.
Yeah.
There's nothing too out there or scary or violent. It's pretty safe. Also, a lot of callbacks to various 80 movies. Some subtle, most of them not.
Right.
You know, like there's a really blatant homage throughout the season of like the Terminator. Mm-hmm. Last season, there was a huge Gremlins influence, you know? So, I don't know. I enjoy all that. If you like 80s movies and you grew up on them, you can't help but like the show a little bit, right? It's a well-made action show. But yeah, emotional consistency. Hardly any emotional stakes. It's all just characters reacting quickly and moving quickly to get to the next thing. Everyone's smart. You know, everyone always figures stuff out really easily. But ultimately, it's just a good time. You know, it's a nice, easy binge.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a good way to kill a couple days.
And you don't regret your time that you spend
Yeah,
with them.
totally. It's fun, and you get to talk about it with other people. So ultimately, I give it a hearty recommend, but it's not going to be a show that you can. Well, basically, it's one of those shows that benefits from binging, and if you had to watch it week to week, you would probably lose interest.
Yeah, it wouldn't hold up week to week as you try to solve the mystery.
Right. Exactly.
For the characters. I don't think this is necessarily fair to the show, but I'm going to do it anyways. I can't help but as I'm watching the show, especially like as I was watching season 1, I was like, man, if they did like the Stephen King thing, and so all these kids go through this traumatic event, and then we catch up with them again when they're like 30, like Stephen King's It. I find myself wanting something along those lines, like dealing with the emotional fallout of what's happened in season 1.
I bet they'll do that. I bet they'll make this generation of Stranger Things go on way too long.
And then we'll get another one.
And then they'll cancel it, and about 10 years later, they'll bring it back when the kids are, quote, adults.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And then there'll be more shenanigans.
Looking forward to that in 2019.
It'll be like in the 2000s or something.
Yeah. Oh, actually, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. By the time that comes out, like the 2000s will be very, nostalgia heavy for everybody.
Exactly.
And I was going to say exactly what you said, Mike. Like, it's not over yet. You might still get that.
Exactly. Yeah. Everything comes back now. Yeah. So anyway, that's our thoughts on Stranger Things Season 3 or Stranger Things 3. Anyone else have anything of import?
No, I'm excited to get into the
one
movie.
Thing.
All right. Yeah. Well, I say it's time to move on to our likely lengthy discussion on Midsommar.
I agree. Let's go.
What time is it?
9 p.m.
That can't be right. The sky is blue.
This is what 9 p.m. is like here.
Welcome and happy midsummer.
Unbelievable.
Let our feast commence.
It's like they're trying to make it gross.
What are they playing?
Skin the fool.
Skin the fool.
So we're just gonna ignore the bed?
It's a bear.
Dude, of all the things to let me sleep through.
That sounds fun.
All right, guys. So as always, before we get into our review of Midsommar, just wanted to let you know that if you haven't seen the movie yet, that's okay. You can keep listening because we're not going to spoil anything for probably the next 10, 15, 20 minutes. And before we do spoil anything, we'll give you a warning. We'll give you a bumper so you have plenty of time to pause the podcast and not have anything spoiled for you. Then you can go see the movie.
Also in the show notes.
That's true. It is. And once you pause, you can go see the movie, then come back and finish the episode and hear all the spoilers.
Yeah. Although, let me just start off right here and say, if you don't want to know anything about the basic idea of this movie, turn back now.
Yeah, and that's probably
Because
the best way to
knew-
see it, in my opinion.
Yeah. I knew one sentence about this movie, and in retrospect, it was too much.
You'll have to tell us that sentence later.
I will, shortly. That's why I'm saying it's not a spoiler, so I'm going to go ahead and say it in non-spoilers, but I'm saying back out now.
Yes,
All
you've
right,
been warned.
that was it. All right, so Midsommar was directed by Ari Aster. It stars Florence Pugh, Jack Rayner, William Jackson Harper, and more. The IMDb synopsis says, a couple travels to Sweden to visit a rural hometown's fabled Midsummer Festival. What begins as an idyllic retreat quickly devolves into an increasingly violent and bizarre competition at the hands of a pagan cult.
Too much.
Yeah, that's a little too much information, I think, in the synopsis there.
Yeah, that's exactly what you were just talking about.
Yeah, that wasn't even what I knew. So, whew. But anyway, okay. So, Midsommar, who wants to kick us off? I vote Justin.
Okay. Yeah, I was about to volunteer myself, so I also vote Justin.
I sensed it, so I volunteered you.
Chris, do you vote me too?
No, I vote Mike.
Oh, shit.
No. Well, I still get to go first because I had 2 votes.
Damn it.
All right, so before I get into this, I do want to just say we were going to review this last week. And last week, it had been a week since I've seen the movie, so now it's been another week. So if I end up fuzzy on the details, I'm going to apologize, but I think I remember the important stuff.
Yeah.
So what I'll say is I was very excited about this film coming off of Hereditary, which was Ari Aster's first film. It came out last year, kind of took the film world by storm in terms of potentially being like this instantly classic horror film. And so how can you not be excited about his next film, especially when it's kind of potentially in that horror genre.
Yeah, that's where I was.
Yeah, so I saw this movie the second I could, which was like, it came out on a Tuesday for some weird reason. I think July 4th inspired that. But so I saw it on a Tuesday night as soon as I could. And like you, Mike, I mean, I had seen the trailer, but I had seen kind of the teaser trailer that didn't give much away, that just kind of set a tone. I'm glad that I saw it that way and I didn't read much more into it. Although I will say that what I expected is kind of the film that I got. And I don't know that that's a bad thing or a good thing necessarily. It's just kind of a fact. Like the film never really surprised me from where it took off from. Like once we started going down a path, I felt like we stayed on that path, right? Like with Hereditary, there was a lot more what's coming. I don't know what's going on. It took some twists, took some turns. And this movie is not that. And I feel like this movie, if you're expecting Hereditary, is going to be a disappointment to you because it's a slow burn. You're just kind of watching events unfold. I think a little passively because there's not a lot to think about and necessarily in terms of like I said, wondering what's going to happen next. But what I will say that like this movie succeeds to me in all levels in terms of like cinematography, this sense of like impending doom and dread and just tone. Like I think this movie is like 10 out of 10 crafted with sheer perfection. I don't know that it's as successful as Hereditary for me. Like I feel like this movie is a little bit more forgettable end of day. And I have less desire to rewatch it, whereas Hereditary, I wanted to immediately rewatch it.
Yeah, I could rewatch that now.
Yeah. So I think I do like this movie. I think there's a lot to unpack on it. I think there's a lot to gain from a second viewing, which I have not had the chance to do yet. A lot of like details to notice. I think it's that kind of movie as well. So, you know, based on one viewing, I'm in the camp that I really, really enjoyed the movie. I don't have an issue with its length like some people do. I thought it was a perfectly suitable length. Like it felt like it was ending when it should have ended. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm very positive on it, but I don't think it's going to go into that instant classic horror film or instant classic folk horror film, whatever you want to call this. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Chris?
Yeah, I mean, you go around to all of us and we'll probably all, we all really liked Hereditary. And so I'm pretty sure we all were looking forward to this film very much, especially it coming out halfway through the summer. It's kind of like a relief to be able to check out something that's not superhero related or Disney live action. And for that reason, in and of itself, it's worth going and checking out just so you can support things that aren't the, superheroes and Disney live action remakes.
Totally.
Yeah. I really like this movie. I think the opening, is it 10 to 15 minutes was really well done. I really enjoyed that. And I remember halfway through the movie thinking back to the beginning of the movie and feeling that I'd been on such a journey, thinking, oh yeah, that was in this movie. If that makes sense, forgetting that was part of this movie and that I've been on this long journey to through with these characters. And I think for that, it's really commendable, that you kind of oh yeah, that's part of this movie too. I think once we get to the place, there's they're the Swedish town. This movie's very funny, and it almost lulled me into I forgot that it was Ari Aster that directed Hereditary, and I was there's a point in this movie I was oh yeah, fuck, I forgot, I forgot what movie I was in.
Yeah.
And then from that moment on, yeah, I was filled with dread about what's going to happen and worried for the characters, or for one character in specifically. I love the attention to detail that's in this film. I don't think that this obviously isn't a real cult or community, but he pulls from a bunch of different communities and rituals and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed the world that he created and being able to sink into it through the eyes of these Americans, these ugly Americans that are there. I really loved it. I think this is a really great film. Like you were saying, 10 out of 10 for a lot of these things. I don't think it's the same as Hereditary. I think you're right. And it's almost hard to compare the two. It's not hard to compare them because it's easy to. You're what's his other movie? It's Hereditary. So which one's better? but they're very different films, I think. Anyways, I'm excited to talk more in depth about it. Mike, what did you think?
Yeah, like you guys, I was looking forward to it. I'll spare the whole I liked Hereditary speech, but this movie is bright, it's colorful, it's vibrant. It doesn't look like you would think a horror movie would look like. It doesn't feel like what a horror movie should feel like, you know? So it has that going for it. I did end up liking the movie. I think if I'm being fair and objective, like you guys said, it's made really well. Like, you know, it's one of the best made movies of the year.
Yeah, so far.
But I didn't like it as much as I wanted to like it. The ending left me a little underwhelmed. And I can get into why in here in a second, but I feel like the ending is too slight. And I think that's kind of what you were saying, Justin, is like once you get on the path to where it's going, it just goes there and that's it. I kept waiting for the part that's going to get crazy or make me think back on the whole movie, and I didn't get that. And so maybe I'm watching it wrong, you know? I think the performances across the board are great. Like,
for sure.
Absolutely great. There's not a weak link in this movie. I think Florence Pugh is great, and she should be getting lots of work because she's amazing.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen anything else she's in? Because I have not, and I know she's in Lady Macbeth, and there's a couple other movies I need to check out. Have you guys seen anything?
Let me check real quick.
I haven't. She hasn't been in a ton. Like, she only has 15 IMDb credits.
Yeah.
Isn't she dating Zach Braff?
Yes, I did see that.
Let's see. Florence Pugh. Oh, yeah, Lady... she was in that crappy Liam Neeson movie.
Yeah, The Commuter.
Oh, okay.
She's in Outlaw King. I saw that.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, so Florence Pugh's great. I think she should get lots of work, and hopefully she will be. I was never bored during this movie. Quite the opposite. I think I was working too hard during this movie for the movie I ended up getting. I was always looking at the paintings and the drawings on the wall because I knew they were going to be important. Knowing how Hereditary was and how much foreshadowing was in it and so on, I was trying to stay ahead of this movie. And I don't think I should have done that because at the very end, I was ahead of the movie.
Yeah.
But all that said, it's really good. I still think it's a good movie. I think, honestly, I watched it wrong. And I'll kind of comment on what I mentioned earlier, which is I think my disappointment in the end boils down to me reading a single headline of a review that was posted sometime before the movie came out. And I either saw it on Reddit or the Casual Cinecast Twitter or something. I didn't even read the review, but the title was enough to take away all the mystery about what I was supposed to be thinking about. And it was basically saying something along the lines like Midsommar and the modern bad boyfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And the fact that they even told me that I was like, one of the main things that was like about a bad boyfriend was far too much.
Yeah. And I mean, it's definitely not a spoiler because from
No,
the
it's not
word
a spoiler,
get-go,
but
he's a bad boyfriend. But I know what you mean.
But the fact that the review even titled it that led me to believe that was going to be an important part of the movie, and it is. And to the point to where the ending felt a little unsatisfying to me. So now I go into the movie, looking for bad boyfriend signs, and I don't know. I wish I hadn't seen that, basically.
Right.
Because then I could have at least been trying to figure that out on my own. I think I still would have arrived to the same place, but I wouldn't have gone in before the opening credits knowing that was like a prominent theme in the movie.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of my opening thoughts. But ultimately, I recommend it still. Obviously, I'm still there for whatever Ari Aster does next. I would love to see the director's cut he keeps talking about.
Yeah, about 30 more minutes. That would be pretty awesome. I'm on board for that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's a slow burn, and I'm down for a slower burn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of talk about, I think all three of us are on the same page about this, but that's knowing where this movie's going, right? And I mean, spoilers for Wicker Man, but at some point I was just like, oh, this is the Wicker Man, which doesn't diminish this movie very much, but I know how it's going to end. I don't necessarily know the details of, who's going to do what type of thing, but I know where the movie's going at that point. But to me, as I'm watching the movie and I make that connection, that doesn't disappoint me. And I could see why it would disappoint some people, but actually what that did for me was increased the dread. I was like, oh no, I know what story I'm watching and I know how it's going to end. And I'm not looking forward to that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, totally. And I think on the opposite turn, I kind of had an idea it was coming, but I kept thinking all right, I'm waiting for the really messed up part of this whole thing,
Yeah.
And it never really got messed up. It never really got disturbing or sad.
I think I would argue, there is certainly a scene in the middle that was disturbing to me.
I think it's kind of relative. that term, right? Like, I think there are going to be people out here who see this and, think it's the most crazy movie they've ever seen, right? Like, and I would compare it to The Shape of Water from 2 years ago. You know how that suddenly became like the fish sex movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas, like, to me, watching it, like, the fish sex stuff, like, bounced off me, and I pretty much, like, it didn't stick in my head about that film, right? But to some people, they're going to see that, and that's what it's going to become. And I think this has some scenes like that, but to people who have seen a lot of other films, a lot of darker horror movies, darker thrillers, darker dramas, I'm with you.
Yeah,
You,
that
Mike.
makes sense. Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to talk a little bit more about, because Chris mentioned this, and I'm curious where you come down, Mike, because I'm a little bit with Chris, and this goes down to where I was saying, like, the movie's kind of 10 out of 10 on all these places, including tone. Like, I found the film really funny a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And even in some places where I wasn't totally positive at first if it was supposed to be funny until, like, scenes continued on and until the movie was over. And I kind of looked back and was like, okay, I think that it was supposed to be funny, because I have read some accounts of people seeing the movie, mostly like people I know on Facebook, friends and family, that sort of thing, that have complained about the audience laughing a lot during the movie and it, like, ruining the experience for them.
Yeah.
Whereas I felt like there was a lot of times that had, like, the laughter was very appropriate. Like, you're laughing with the movie as opposed to at it.
Yeah,
where do you come down, Mike?
Well, yeah, my audience was laughing the whole time. The problem is I don't think they're laughing with it. Like, I had a really simple audience, let's put it that way.
Sure.
Like, they laughed at the clothing. They laughed at the accents. Every time a character sang something or chanted something, there's a laugh.
Okay, yeah.
So later on in the movie, when there's, like, some really crazy stuff going on, I don't think they realized that, like, they were laughing with the movie.
Yeah.
I think they were of the opinion, like, this is the dumbest shit I've ever seen kind of laughing.
Right. Where were you? Did you laugh personally?
No. I was in a bad mood from all their laughter.
Oh, that's rough.
But so I
That
was
doesn't help.
incapable of, like, seeing the forest for the trees. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I recognized that, like, there was some crazy stuff going on, and I didn't think it was particularly, like, it wasn't cringy or anything. Like, I was into it. Like, so there's never a point where I wasn't into the movie. But because of their laughter, I never switched gears into, like, it's okay to laugh with this movie kind of thing. Because, like, they were laughing, like, at the very beginning. You know what I mean? They were laughing at, like, a certain, like, Florence Pugh reaction at the beginning of the movie that's supposed to be really heartbreaking and sad.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah. So there was just never a time whenever, like, I had a good audience that was, like, giving the movie the respect it deserved, you know?
Yeah. Well, I do want to talk about some of the specific moments that are, whether or not they're funny once we get into spoilers, but I just, like, for the people who haven't seen it maybe yet, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think even, like, in the first 10 minutes, there's kind of spoilers. If you guys are down for it, I'm down for moving into spoilers.
Yeah, real quick, we have a question. We have a few questions, actually, from listeners, that most of which need to be read in spoilers. But we have one here from @RLTerry1, which is Ryan L. Terry on Twitter, friend of the show. Hey, Ryan. He says, compare the depictions of grief in both Hereditary and Midsommar. And I think we could talk about this in non-spoilers.
I think
And
so.
what I will say is, like you were saying, I think in Midsommar, the dread is there, I guess, just like Hereditary, but the dread doesn't seem as dreadful, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
there is a lot of humor and bright colors and vibrant stuff, and also a theme of family and gaining something throughout this movie that I don't think Hereditary has. Hereditary is all about losing.
This is Hereditary, but I think you could argue that at the end of Hereditary, people have gained a family, even if it's...
Yeah, but that's not exactly prominent throughout the movie.
Yeah, okay.
I think there's basically the different ways that you can experience grief together, right? That's, like, what seems so different in the two movies to me, whereas, like, I mean, actually, maybe they're kind of the same now that I think about it. And I'm trying to not be spoilery about this, right, and talk about it, but...
Yeah. There are very similar themes in both movies, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they're similar in some senses of, like, how attempting to deal with grief alone can affect you. And I think that's similar in both films.
Yeah, it makes sense. I get it. And yeah, maybe we can dive in more in that into spoilers too, but I guess they're more similar than I realized, but the tonal difference, I think is more hopeful in Midsommar.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing we'll get into probably. I also think the grief kind of manifests itself in the way that she clings to her boyfriend. Like, her grief doesn't allow her to see, how truly awful he actually is. She can't be on her own, and the grief drives her to codependency, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Cool.
Okay, let's move on into spoilers.
Yeah,
Yes.
please.
Okay.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
Any more cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
there's a bear in the cage.
All right, the end. We're done.
Yep. There is a bear in the cage. There's also a bear on her wall.
Yeah,
Like
I
in her
wrote that
apartment.
down in my notes, yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of like all the tapestries and pictures and everything on that scene is like spelling it out for you, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is all that stuff, in your guys' opinion, was that foreshadowing, or is there something to see in that stuff that would explain more about what's happening later? Or maybe a little bit of both? What do you guys think?
Probably a little bit of both. I think there's a little too much. I think it's a little too obvious in certain places. Like the whole quilt with the pubic hair ritual and the blood drink.
Mm-hmm.
That was just entirely too foreshadowed, I think.
I kind of agree, but also it allows the scene when that happens to not have to explain to the audience what's going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
like
that would have been better, I think.
We can
I think it would have been better to not explain it and then people be confused and then look back on it and be like, like in Hereditary.
maybe
like-
I got this joy in figuring it out before anyone else in the movie did, right? Like this joy of watching him, like that girl take the pie and make it, and then like he's about to eat the pie and then noticing his drink is like a redder color than everyone
Yeah.
else's, and like because of that very blatant obvious like foreshadowing of that, or showing us what's going to happen before, like you get that moment of like, oh man, and you get that little bit of dread, which I liked.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I liked it too, but also I didn't want to be like picking up on it as easily as I was. You know what I mean? I wanted like another layer of like
A little bit
any
more
minute
puzzle.
now. I'm gonna be thrown for a loop. You know?
Yeah. And if anything, I'd say maybe like cut the shot where we see the girl making the pie, specifically like the girl that's into him,
Yeah.
because then they're just sitting down to dinner. All of a sudden he's like, is this like a pubic hair? And then we notice his drink, and then we can think back like, I don't know.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys this: what happened to all of the other tourists that the people out on their like journeys, you know, brought back? Like we start off at the place where they take the drugs, you know, and there are so many outsiders there. And the next day, it's like only 6 people are there. Like the 4 that we hang out with, and then like the 2 people from England. Like where did the rest of all those people go?
I guess I wasn't sure if those were outsiders or if they were other people returning home, but were still dressed.
It looked like there was like different groups of people all brought back by like a native to the tribe. You know what I mean? Like there were like several groups, and then they're just not there. Like even when they get to the place, there's like a scene when like the one guy's like, "Can I film this?" And he's like, "Yeah, discreetly." And there's like a whole bunch of strangers there, like that aren't in like the pagan clothing.
Yeah,
and then they're just not there later in the movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I assumed that those were people returning who were from there, like people like our main Swedish guy that we meet in the beginning.
And they were just dressed in like normal clothing, but they didn't bring anyone back with them.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I feel like there's some people there that didn't fit the description, like some really dark-haired people, but I have to go back and like look. But I feel like there's a very clear point where like I feel like people just aren't there anymore. I don't know. Maybe I need to watch it again.
It
also
does feel
feels-
smaller, I think.
Maybe that's outside of the town. You know, like I know that they haven't gotten to the actual town yet, so maybe it's like a park right before you get to the town. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to watch it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. If anyone listening remembers, shoot us an email or whatever.
Since we're kind of in the beginning, I want to talk about the part and scene where like the 2 people jump off the cliff. If you guys don't have anything else before that. This is one of the sections where I found myself laughing, but it was really, really dark. And I was like, I am laughing because of the way that this has been portrayed, but I don't know if I should be. And that's like the older guy who jumps feet first into the rock. And like, I mean, obviously it's difficult to watch and very traumatic. Like the bone breaking and his legs being all fucked up. It's like it's a little grotesque and like shocking. But to me, it was almost filmed in a very funny way, being that one solid wide shot.
Mm-hmm.
And then they bring out this like giant wooden hammer to like smash his face in and kill him. It just seems so over the top to me that I found it kind of funny.
I could see
What
that.
do you guys think?
I don't know that I necessarily found that funny.
Yeah, I didn't find it funny, but I get it.
Yeah. I
Like,
did
it's
see
certainly goofy looking.
Yeah.
I'm just like, why would you like the ridiculous of the guy jumping feet first? Like when the old lady, because the older lady did it and she went like head first, and there's something. It was just kind of like, bam, done, she's dead. Like, oof, you know. There's something funny. Why would
I remember
you
when
do
it
that?
happened, I was like, what an idiot.
The older guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was what was going through my brain. I was like, what a terrible, like, you have 72 years to think about this, and then this is the way you do it.
Yeah, and I mean, it was almost like a Buster Keaton shot, to me, of like just this really wide shot, so you can see the actor from head to toe doing this thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, they're not doing it for real, like Buster Keaton did his stunts, but like that's just what came to mind. Like that's maybe why it had a little tiny bit of humor to me.
Yeah, that's the first time I noticed there was like not that many outsiders anymore. I was like, what the hell? There's only like 6 people here.
Yeah, I immediately after they jump, I remember them talking about, well, you guys put your older people in nursing homes. This is a more humane way of doing it. I was like, jumping off a cliff, you know, like there are more humane ways than jumping off the cliff. You can they obviously have a plethora of drugs, you know, like maybe you should just give them the drugs instead of jumping off a cliff. That would have been a better way to go. And then if you don't make it, they smash your face in with a hammer, which doesn't seem, I mean, like none of that seems exactly the way you should do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing though, right? Where it's yeah, we see their point that it's more humane, but also it's like, it's barbaric and stupid. So, of course, a human being wouldn't like to witness that, you know? So that is the kind of not the joke, but that's kind of the whole essence of it, you know?
Yeah. So I keep wanting to call him Cheaty because he's in The Good Place. But what's his name? The guy that he's the anthropologist and he's going to do his thesis and the other guy steals it from him. I'm trying to...
Josh?
Oh, Josh is the character's name.
Yeah. So do you guys think Josh knew what was going to happen the next day? That there, you know, it was a ritualistic suicide?
Yeah, I think he knew that part. I don't think he knew much else, but I think he knew that part.
Yeah. Man, what a dick, because he probably should have told told the other people, especially Florence Pugh's character, Danny, what was going to happen, because that would be hard for her to watch.
Yeah, well, I think that this character in particular, for me, at least more blatantly than any of the other ones, kind of embodied a bit of like greediness and like selfishness. And I think like if he had mentioned what was going to happen, they might not want to go. They might be like, hey, we don't want a part of this, and try to back out. And I think wanting to study it was probably his best play to get what he wanted, to not say anything.
Right. And also I think he's so into it. Like he's so not offended by it that I don't think he's necessarily thinking about what others could possibly think about it, because he's just like into the culture. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah.
So he probably hears about it and he's not like, his first thought isn't like, are my friends okay with this? He's probably like, that's interesting and I want to see it.
Right.
Yeah.
We also have a question, another one from Twitter at TUO_podcast, which is the Unlucky Ones podcast, asks, who would have made a better career in anthropology, Christian or Josh?
Josh.
Yeah. Pretty easy.
For the reasons we just discussed.
Yeah, Christian sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
more than Josh
doesn't seem to be very decisive, and seemed like he was going to try to just piggyback on what Josh's idea already was.
Yeah, he's like, I'm open to collaboration.
Yeah, although the one argument I will make for Christian is that Josh didn't seem to actually have the respect for the rituals and the culture.
Right.
That I think Christian might have had a little more respect in, you know, because he does go take the photos and try to sneak in and take them like after he's been told specifically, don't take photos of this book. You can't do that.
Yeah. So Christian seemed to respect them as people more and like respected their rules a lot more.
Right. So maybe he would have been found out or would have done that. Well, he did do that in the wrong place and got punished for it. But if that didn't happen and he went on to be an anthropologist, he probably would have done that somewhere else and made some enemies.
Makes sense. Yeah, totally. I think he would have been more passionate, but not as tactful, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that brings me to one of the themes and things that I found in the movie, and this kind of comes off the way people reacted to that first scene where the older people kill themselves by jumping off the cliff. I found the different characters' reactions to that to be saying something about the way that we tolerate things and the way that we maybe don't want to offend other people by calling them out for doing something that's wrong. There's certainly a lot of that sort of thing going on in like our cultural climate here in America and like political stuff going on. And so I found myself thinking about a lot of that for at least like the first half of the movie or like from that point on until things start to take a bit of a different turn. Did you guys find that at all? Like, I guess like in the sense that Florence Pugh, Danny, she was pretty put off by that, and the other two tourists were like, what are you doing? Like, we have to get out of here. We have to go. This isn't right. But then everyone's like, well, this is their culture, so like this is their history. This is how they've done it. So let's not try to like upset people. Let's not be offensive to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There actually a debate started raging in our comments actually when I asked for like input on Midsommar, anything to read on the show. And the Unlucky Ones podcast and Matt and Ashley at the Movies, Mashley at the Movies on Twitter.
Yeah,
they actually sort of got into like a debate in our comments about that very thing. And let me just go ahead and read it real quick. It says, like the Unlucky Ones podcast says, I also loved how the commune itself was presented instead of being classic horror villains. Aster calmly presents them as people in the middle of their celebration, just doing what their ancestors did before them. And then Matt and Ashley at the Movie says, yeah, but they're still villains. And then another person chimes in, looks like J_Aragon23, and they say, are they villains though? They are just practicing what is customary to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that represents the range of what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It is such a prominent theme in the movie that it inspired that debate, in our own comment section, and it just happened all on its own. I absolutely think there's something there. I think there's something to the extent, and this is coming from someone who doesn't even respect his own religion that he was baptized in. I'm kind of tired of being told to respect other people's religions too, to an extent, when I have moral qualms against them.
Well, I mean, yeah, moral qualms. Oh man, that's
I'm not
really
going to go into specifics, but basically, if something's wrong, like polygamy, there are certain religions that are into polygamy. I think that's stupid, and I shouldn't have to respect it because someone else believes in it.
Well, yeah, you think it's morally wrong. Then that makes sense.
That's a very light case, but there are countries in the Middle East that like stone women to death for various things, and that's like part of their culture. That doesn't make it right. I shouldn't respect it,
Right, yeah. And just this idea that because that's the way that something has always been done, we're going to offend people if we speak out against it, so we shouldn't speak out against it. That's the way that I think Christian is acting, and some of the other people. I get Josh to an extent, and I think they are for other reasons as well, but I think they're punished for that. Like kind of everybody ends up punished for that.
Yeah, all right, so this is my take, at least on the jumping off the cliff. While I disagree with the means of which they are doing it, I don't necessarily think that assisted suicide is worse than sticking people in, nursing homes and just kind of letting them rot away.
But is it assisted suicide? Because they use drugs and drinks and food to put people in crazy hazes.
That's true.
Those old people didn't seem like they were, especially the old man, to me didn't seem like he was in a right state of mind. It seemed like it was a lot of peer pressure to do it. Like, what if he woke up and he's like, I could wait till I'm 80.
Yeah, that's true. I'm
feeling pretty good.
I didn't take it that way. I felt that both of them, this is the way we do it, and this is what we're going to do. And so I felt that it was consensual. And I think there's things that happen later on in the movie that are unconsensual that I don't agree with.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's a slippery slope. This is like step one, and then it kind of crescendos, I guess.
Yeah. Anyways, it's a difficult thing, like where to respect somebody's culture or religion and where to say no. And I think wiser people have gone further in depth with it than I possibly can.
Right, yeah. Moving on.
Yeah, so I want to know what you guys felt about the drug sequences themselves. I thought they were beautiful and really amazing. I'm sure I've seen stuff like that before, but at the time and even now, I'm hard-pressed to think of something that I've seen that's similar to this. She's walking along and all the colors are changing and, the flowers pulsating in her headdress. And there's
that was cool.
There's faces in the background, like in the trees staring at her. And I only just caught that. And that's one of the reasons I would like to see it again, is just to catch those little details that are happening, especially in the drug sequences. So I was wondering how you guys felt about that, because I think that that's the highlight of the film to me.
I think the visual language and everything that's going on with the cinematography is like really the highlight of the film for me. So I'm with you on that. That definitely plays a big part in that. But just the tone of it too, like, starting with the scene early on when they take mushrooms when they first get there, and she kind of has that moment where she takes off running and she's hearing like people singing, and all of those were like, I guess probably the most sort of like horror-y part of the film to me. And I thought they were really cool. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, visually, they're really interesting and they're pretty subtle. And they're more like beautiful than they are like the normal trippy drug sequence. Mm-hmm. As a result, though, I found myself sort of confused as to how drugged they were. Like, especially the end and Christian and what happens with him. Because he's very clearly drugged and then not even peer pressured, just pressured by these strangers to, consummate this relationship that he hasn't shown much interest in, right? And I wonder how much of that was him being an actual shitty boyfriend and how much of it was him not in a proper state of mind.
Yeah, there is kind of an out for him in that way, whereas if he had done it fully conscious, we could hate him a lot more, which actually I think adds to the subtlety of this. Like he is a shitty boyfriend.
Yeah, I think it's a good wrinkle to add in there because it kind of makes you wonder at the end, who's the real villain here, right?
And also what is her mind? Because she's also on drugs too. So what's her mindset? She sees this happening. And that's actually one of my favorite sequences, is like her screaming with the other girls after she's seen like the orgy sequence. I thought that was really great.
Yeah. But, because of the way it's filmed and all of that, like we just mentioned, it's kind of hard to tell exactly how in their right minds either character is in the last 30 minutes of the movie.
Right. I mean, I got a sense that what the drugs they were given were, obviously they were like making them trip in some extent, but I felt like it was drugs to more awaken, like they're more like true being, I guess, for lack of a better word. But some people say that
I don't know. I feel like they gave him Viagra.
When you get drunk, you get more honest.
I feel like I think they gave him like a horny drug because this helps with your vitality.
I mean,
so
that's
basically,
possible.
It's like we're gonna give you a really big boner, and then cut you loose.
That may be part of it. I guess I'm just thinking of how sometimes if you get to a certain level of drunk, you get kind of honest.
Sure. Yeah.
Kind of in that
and brave.
Yeah, it kind of brings out a little bit more of the stuff that you're suppressing.
Yeah, makes sense.
And if he's kind of a bad boyfriend, but he's trying to fake being a good one, maybe doing this other girl, and that's part of that.
Yeah, could be. But I also feel like there's the implication, the way I read that scene is I was a lot more sympathetic, but maybe that's because I went into the movie before the movie even began. I knew it was about a bad boyfriend, obviously, like I mentioned earlier. So as soon as the redheaded girl started flirting with Christian, I was like, yep, I know where this is going,
Yep.
And when it actually came, I felt like it was executed in a way that I almost felt bad for him because he's at the table. It looks like he's having cold sweats at the table.
Oh, yeah.
And then she gets up, and then Florence Pugh's gone at this point, and it's literally everyone in the village staring directly at him. So I almost feel like there's this implication of hey, we expect you to do this, and if you don't, there's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you in that I felt bad for him. I think the reason that is because he doesn't do anything classically horrible as a boyfriend, right? He has, to our knowledge, he hasn't cheated on her. He's not hitting her. He doesn't do any of those sort of melodramatic things we picture of a bad boyfriend. It's all of these subtle things. It's
turning an argument around on her by threatening to leave whenever she questions him or something like that. And
It's subtly abusive, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's a relationship that he doesn't want to be in, and I think he would have, if the tragedy with her parents and sister hadn't happened at the beginning of the movie, he would have broken up with her. But it's one of those scenarios where, oh fuck, I can't break up with her now.
Yeah. Again, you're acting a certain way to spare someone's feelings, right, and not saying what you truly think and feel, which kind of goes in with the whole like respecting people's cultures and being tolerant, right? Like, it's kind of that same sort of motivation,
right? It comes from an honest place.
Yeah, he's like trying to do the right thing, but in doing the right thing, he's doing the wrong thing.
And he's making himself unhappy in the process.
Yeah, and her, and it's all bad. It's bad for everybody. So when he's being punished so severely for that, among other things, like I'm not saying I recognize he's a bad boyfriend, right? Like
he definitely deserves a punishment, but
he gets more than he deserves, as a lot of people in this film do. You know, like Will Poulter's character, the kind of funny friend guy. He just pees on an ancient tree accidentally, completely innocently, other than the fact that he's just not taking the time to really care about these people's culture.
Right.
You know, he's kind of the opposite of the anthropologists.
And when they call him out on it, he doesn't apologize right away. His first reaction is like, what? It's a stupid dead tree.
Yeah, it's not that he peed on the tree that like really offended me. It was his reaction to peeing on the tree. He's like, I didn't know. How am I supposed to know? And then you have like, and the thing that really sold that scene for me was the guy that goes up to him that catches him peeing, and he's just, I don't even know that he has a name in the movie, but he's just devastated that this guy has peed on his ancestors, you know, like the burial ground of his ancestors, and he's like, it's as if he's, you know, like murdered him again, you know, and it was just a really well acted scene from that guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But also on the flip side of that, these people intentionally bring outsiders into their camp for a specific reason that we find out later what it is. And they don't bother explaining any of these things to the people. They don't have any, you know what I mean? Like, so if you bring and invite a bunch of outsiders to your camp and you have very specific ways of doing things, you probably shouldn't fly off the handle at them when they don't understand certain things. Just saying. He should have said sorry. I'm not siding with him. I'm just saying also that guy's kind of a dick.
Yeah, no, I that was my feeling during that scene. I was like, chill out, guy. Like, I understand that it sucks and it's like you're mad, but like...
Yeah, but it's kind of like inviting somebody over to your house and then somebody peeing on your couch. You're like, wait,
not really,
that's not
though, because it's true.
You know, like,
no,
well, okay, I mean, like...
It would be like if you were like, we only sit down to pee in our house. You can't stand up and pee. And then he was like walking down the hallway and he heard a pee stream and he's like, what? And started banging on the door and being like, are you standing up? Are you standing up? You better sit down. We don't do that here.
Yeah.
That's more of like what an accurate comparison would be, I think.
Like peeing on a toilet and being like, that was my grandmother's toilet that we don't use.
We just keep it there for decoration.
In the bathroom.
I think, you know, Will Poulter's character is a very toxic dude. Like, he's overly masculine, very, like, stereotypical example of an unlikable American. And I think Christian, Will Poulter's character, Josh, I think they all represent, like, an unattractive aspect of, like, American males that are kind of toxic. Whether it be ambition, being a shitty boyfriend who's not committed, gaslighting people, or, you know, just kind of being a self-centered asshole. I think all the dudes are unlikable to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the most that I find this film fitting into the horror genre, in the sense that everybody who dies has done something wrong. Yeah. Or has this like character flaw that brings about their doom.
Right. Like you, it's been a while since I've seen the film, but what did the British people do? The other two that also came.
They blatantly disrespected the ritual out loud in front of everybody, very violent, like very not violently, but like very
tried to leave
vocally.
I'm not clear on why they were originally brought to the camp. Were they brought there to be made sacrifices?
Okay, so yeah, they were there to find sacrifices. So I feel like they were always going to die, even if they hadn't done anything wrong.
Yeah, but they welcomed Florence Pugh into
because they need a queen. But here's the thing: the celebration's supposed to last like 9 days. It only happens every 90 years. Mm-hmm. A new queen is chosen every year or something like that, I think. Right. But the sacrifices in the other celebration, they said like it only happens once every 90 years, and we only saw 1 day of celebration.
No,
so there's still like 8 more days of celebration left.
I think we saw quite a few more days than just 1 day.
No, I think we saw 1 day of the official celebration. That's what Ari Aster said in the AMA. So he even says that implies that there are days after that where celebration still has yet to happen. So who knows what else happens after we leave?
Yeah. Maybe the first day is the worst of it because the sacrifices need to be made to make the rest of the celebration awesome.
Could be, but I'm wondering if Florence Pugh's not in danger, because remember, she looks on the phone at the beginning and he's like, this is last year's queen. I don't think we saw that person.
I thought it was like black and white, an old black and white picture. Maybe
Yeah, it
I'm
was on his phone.
misremembering. Oh, okay.
Anyway, I don't know.
Who knows?
I'm just wondering if she's has the new family she thinks she has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a bit of what now to be figured out after the movie's over for like each of us to decide on, right?
Mm-hmm. You
Regardless.
want
like
to talk about
imagining
the
where she goes.
Yeah, we have a question about the ending, actually.
Okay, cool.
Ian Bull... Oh my gosh.
Bulaklak.
Okay, woo. Okay, at Ian_Bulaklak on Twitter asks, would you consider the ending to be more cathartic or disturbing?
Personally or for the character?
Personally, I think.
And
He's
you can do
asking
the
what
character,
you would consider the ending to be.
I mean, I guess in a sense, I would find it more disturbing personally, even though I've seen worse, as we touched on earlier. So nothing in this movie felt that like disturbing to me deeply.
Yeah.
I felt like the punishment didn't fit the crime necessarily, particularly for Christian, the main guy.
Yeah.
So I mean, I kind of felt disturbed. I'm like, oh, poor guy. But
Well, I would argue that anyone who died didn't deserve it as much as all the people that lived.
Well, you think Florence Pugh deserved it more?
Yeah, absolutely, 1,000%. Yeah.
Why did she deserve to die? I like that is something I don't.
She decided to join a community that just got done murdering people.
Oh, I never thought that she was. I thought my take was that she was so out of it that, and I didn't even think that she had joined this community.
She was smiling at the end. She made a conscious decision to like be their queen and chose who to die.
Yeah, I don't know that she made a conscious decision to be the queen. I think she's dancing around, and this is my take. So like, it's not. I'm not trying to, but like. So my take was that she danced around the thing. She's high as fuck, and she's just going along with everything, just like the boyfriend did. The only thing that she's culpable for, I think, and she's also high when she's doing it, but she has a choice. She can choose somebody to die, and one is one of the villagers, and one is her boyfriend. In my eyes, that's the only thing that she's really culpable for in that way. Like, she doesn't necessarily know. And also, I think the community does give her moments of catharsis, that she accepts those moments while she's high, like the moment where she is screaming and then her screams are echoed back to her by the villagers. I think in that moment, she's probably part of the community. And one more thing, it is interesting. I think I was listening to an Ari Aster interview as well, but like they were talking about Ari Aster sees the ending very differently than Florence Pugh. Like, Florence Pugh sees it as if her character's had a mental break and she doesn't realize what's going on.
I think that would have made a better movie, but I got the feeling, like Ari Aster said, that it's supposed to be more cathartic.
Yeah, that she's joined this community. Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that we're supposed to think that automatically, like, paints her as the biggest villain in the movie. Like, she's more toxic than any of those dudes.
She joins the villains,
right?
Who are the people with this
gladly
sort of
joins
murderous
them, it seems.
Cult rituals. But and I think she joins them once she makes that choice, right? And I'm sure she's conflicted, but I feel like in that whole end scene where the thing's burning and she's hearing all the people screaming, like, I think I got the impression that it clicks in her head. And she's like, oh, yes, this is better. Whereas, like, before I had no one to grieve with. My boyfriend was crappy. His friends didn't want anything to do with me. I was dealing with this alone because all my family died.
He's dead.
And now I have all of this to share with, and therefore I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's what I took it. And so I think it's definitely cathartic for her. And I definitely, that feels more hopeful to me as something we were talking about earlier. It felt more hopeful and like on a more of an upswing of an ending in terms of like how it deals with grief than Hereditary did, because it kind of just had this message to me of going through grief with other people is helpful and like is a lot better than going through it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And like they show several times that they're willing to feel with her on a level that her boyfriend never was, right? Like at the beginning of the movie when she's bawling her eyes out in his lap he just sits there kind of like, I don't know what to do, you know? But as soon as she starts bawling with all those girls, they take it upon themselves to bawl with her. You know, they freak out and they start crying and breathing together. So they're very much like a community if you're one of theirs, you know, if they start to accept you.
You know, and that's how I kind of took... I felt like these people were brought in not as sacrifices initially, but they were brought in to become part of the community. Or
No, well, 9 sacrifices needed to be made.
Right.
Or like, maybe not 9, I can't remember, like 8 or something. But there needed to be a portion of outsiders and a portion of insiders that needed to be sacrificed.
Okay.
An important part of the ritual was they had to kill outsiders.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was 4 outsiders, the 2 elderly people, the 2 volunteer sacrifices, so we're at 8, and then she had the choice of the 9th, which was either another community member or the boyfriend.
Yeah,
and she chose boyfriend. So four of them had to be outside, and I guess there had to be a 5th outside option.
Right, and so that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier, which was that like that argument that our people were having on Twitter, which basically just like, are they villains or are they just practicing what is customary to them? And what I would say is, if that's your custom, then you are villains.
Don't do it. Yeah. Yeah, especially in that, I think the first thing can be debated. The last sequence, the consent of it is where, you know, you don't murder people. That's obviously the wrong thing. And it doesn't matter what your religion or belief is.
Like if your God tells you to sacrifice humans, find a new God.
Exactly.
Right. And it's almost like if there were a more fair way, like if there was a potential where all 9 would have ended up being villagers and followers of like their religion or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, I'd feel differently.
You could almost feel differently about them being villains, even though human sacrifice not that cool. But like, if some of them have to be outsiders who aren't part of it, who are going to be sacrificed against their will, you're villains.
Even if they're all volunteer, and like that's kind of what you're saying. But like, if everybody had volunteered for it, I would feel a little bit better. Still murder, but yeah, I'm just basically repeating what you're saying. But good point.
Yeah, nicely done.
Thank you. That is one other point where I'm convinced that this movie is supposed to be funny, and because it happens during like the end climax, I'm like, okay, think I'm right. And that is the part where they load the 2 volunteers into the thing before they set it on fire, and that guy's like, here, let me give you this tree oil that will take away all of your pain. And they take it, and then you're inside when it's on fire, and the second the fire hits the one guy, he just immediately starts screaming in like the most horrendous pain.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty funny. Like the way they kind of like, I mean, it's kind of messed up, of course.
Right.
But funny.
You explaining it that way makes it a lot funnier to me as well, but I did not think it was funny at the time necessarily.
Yeah, it didn't register at the time, but I get it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the whole ritual thing is kind of a little bit of BS at that point, right? Like it's like seeing the Wizard of Oz like behind the curtain sort of thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes you wonder what he's thinking in that moment. Like, oh crap, this is stupid.
One last thing that I have is, what do you guys think of the significance of the bear outfit, him being sewn into the bear? Is that something I missed? I know that there's a lot of like allusion to bears like throughout the film, but I think that's more foreshadowing. Is there an explanation for why he's in the bear suit?
I don't have one.
I don't. I kept trying to think back to the painting that's in her apartment where the bear is kind of towering over and bearing down on this, what I remember being like a small girl.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if like maybe it has something to do with what we were talking about earlier about bear. You're like the top of the chain sort of thing, and this sort of maybe potentially even like alpha male bear, right?
Yeah, I mean it could be
that's
that
what he is.
Yeah, he has all the power over her, and she's like at his will and always doing what he wants to do. And I don't know. I mean, it might be a little on the nose, but it could be that he's sort of a brute.
Yeah, and that's the way I read the movie. I'm not sure how that factors into the world. And how that factors into their ritual.
Yeah.
If that's why they're doing it. But in terms of watching the movie and reading it as a movie, that's where I'm at.
I did really like the moment where we first see the bear in the cage. And they're like, when are we going to talk about the bear in the cage? Why? It's a bear in the cage. That's all you need to know. Thought that was funny.
Yeah. And they're villains, too, because they killed an innocent bear, man.
That's true.
It's sad. And I also think they're villains, too. One more point. the guy that our main character, Christian, that when he's naked and he stumbles into that like shed and he finds, I believe it's the British tourist who freaked out about the cliff diving thing.
Yeah.
And he's all like filleted open and strung out with like his lungs stretched out and all this stuff. Very Silence of the Lambs like. His lungs are still breathing, correct?
Yeah.
So the implication is that he is alive.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I would have assumed that they killed all these people and then burned them, but that dude was kept alive, and that feels very torturous to me, which I don't understand how that fits into everything that they're doing. I have a bit of a problem with that.
Maybe he needed to die on a certain day, but he wasn't in the fire though, so I don't know.
Oh, I assumed he was in the fire.
Was he in the fire? Okay, well then
he would have been one of the four.
If he was in the fire, then in that case, they're keeping him alive until the day they need to sacrifice him, but they don't want him to run away or be a dick.
No, because the other people, when they load them into the house to burn them, they're already dead and their bodies are like stuffed with straw.
That's true.
So like they don't need to be alive. Christian doesn't need to be alive. It doesn't seem like. Well, so why do they keep him alive? I don't get it.
There could be something to be said about the nine people are being sacrificed. He had flowers like in his mouth and nose and eyes, or maybe it was just his eyes. But and he's put above like what looks like a garden. So is he being sacrificed to a harvest god of some kind? And I guess in that way, does each person being sacrificed to a certain aspect of life?
Well, yeah, that's interesting because like the kids at the beginning of the movie, they actually have like a they're like singing a song like "Skin the Fool," and then Will Poulter's character has the fool hat on, like the jester hat, and he's skinned. So maybe, like, depending on what they represent in the sacrifice, they can be prepared in different ways.
Yeah, I think I don't remember who was telling me that there's in the room where they're all staying, and there's all those images on the wall. Like somewhere in there's a lot of like butterfly imagery, and that guy's kind of butterfly like.
Makes sense.
Too. So I think there's an explanation in there. It's just something that I did not pick up on a first.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like one person gets a bear outfit, one person gets butterflied, and the other person gets skinned like a fool. And then I'm sure there's some other ones that we just didn't notice first go around.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a little more at peace with that then. I'm certainly willing to go. I didn't get it, as opposed to saying it doesn't make sense and therefore it's bad.
Yeah,
totally.
Because there's definitely layers to this. I think that you can get as you watch it.
Yeah.
Details, I guess. Maybe not layers.
Yeah.
I think we've kind of made our point a little bit, but the movie really doesn't take any twists and turns, and I kind of felt like I was waiting for that. Like,
yeah.
Once we get on the ride of going to this festival, I expect the festival to be weird. I expect there to maybe be some weird sex stuff and some violent sacrifices, and I don't expect anybody to really make it out. And that's what we got. And there's a bit of a disappointment in that for me on a first viewing, but I don't know how that's going to be on repeat viewings.
Yeah, I agree. I think talking about this movie is more satisfying than watching it. So that is a credit to the movie itself, right? The fact that I did feel like I was ahead of the movie in a lot of places, but I still managed to get like an hour and a half conversation or whatever, not an hour and a half, but like an hour conversation out of this thing, I think is impressive. You know, I didn't think I would have that much to talk about, but Ari Aster puts a lot of detail and layers into his script. The foreshadowing is all there. So it is fun to dissect on like that kind of level, right? Like on a book report kind of level, in a sense. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it makes for a very cathartic ending like he wants, and I don't just think that's because like a boyfriend gets burned and I'm a guy and that's who I identify with. I don't think that's it. I just genuinely think that like, yeah, just lack of surprise and lack of an extra layer or something that like I didn't see coming, you know?
Right.
Yeah,
I agree.
Ultimately, though, I recommend it. I'm sitting at a 3.5, maybe 4. If I see it again, I can see it easily bumping up to a 4. Easily.
Yeah. I'm sitting at a solid 4. Not 4.5, not 3.5, solid 4.
I respect that.
I am at a 4 for sure.
I think I'm going to wait until the director's cut comes out, hopefully later this year. And once I watch, like, I don't want to watch this movie 3 times, but I will definitely watch the director's cut that's like 30 minutes longer, and I can see that making a huge difference.
Yeah. And it's still currently sitting pretty high up there on my best of 2019 list so far.
You know, even though I gave it 3.5 stars, if I had to break down and make like a best of 2019 so far list, it would definitely be on there just from the sheer fact that it's made well. and we had such a good conversation about it, you know?
And perhaps the quality of movies around it, that also does to say something about
maybe
that.
that too.
It does, a little bit. And maybe we'll do that soon. One of those episodes, best of 2019 so far.
Maybe.
Cool. Well, I have nothing else on Midsommar. What about you guys?
I'm good.
That's it. Sounds like a recommend all the way around.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. So I guess that does it for the show.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening. It was definitely a long one, but Midsommar deserves it.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
All right, stay tuned to this channel. Pretty soon we will be putting out a Casually Criterion episode on Weekend by Jean-Luc Godard. And we will also be putting out a poll on Twitter for choosing the next Casually Criterion episode we do. It will be full of 3 movies with a common theme. We don't know what it is yet, but it'll be there. And then probably next week we are going to be doing The Lion King, most likely.
Yeah, unless we get something we're more excited about. But right now it looks like The Lion King will be the best thing to review.
Indeed.
That's
certainly
a
the most
ringing
popular
endorsement from Justin.
Can you tell I'm excited?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you want to send us your questions or thoughts on The Lion King for us to read on the show or answer on the show, send those on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram to @casualcinecast or to our email, casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
Thanks so much for listening, guys, and we will see you next time.
Later.
Remember Call Me By Your Name? That whole conversation about Armie Hammer, the way he says later?
Kind of.
He says later. Like, no? Okay.
Sorry. I've only saw the movie the one time, and
Yeah,
That
me
was
too,
a
but I
while
remember
ago.
that later scene. All right.
I just remember the part where he danced.
Yeah, he did
All right,
dance.
stop it.